Thank you, Senator Roberts. Senator Fawcett.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. The media has been full recently, and for good reason, about the conflict in Ukraine, with Russia's illegal and unjustifiable invasion of their neighbour. We have seen the pushback by Ukrainian forces, and people welcome that and the counterattacks they have conducted. But it's important to remember that that is not the only place where these kinds of actions are occurring, and in our region, Myanmar is facing a very similar situation where the civilian population is being oppressed by their own military. The military who had a coup to get rid of a democratically elected government who in fact won in a landslide, and the military has sought to entrench their own power and to eliminate any dissent to that. Despite that, despite the overwhelming force, the military force which is applied, the National Unity Government and the ethnic armed forces which have fought for some years in Myanmar have actually made good progress in holding their own. The Special Advisory Council for Myanmar, an independent group for former United Nations human rights experts, estimate that the National Unity Government and the resistance organisations have effective control now over some 52% of Myanmar's territory. They've said that the Myanmar military can only claim to have stable control over about 17%. And so on one hand, we should be celebrating that because that's actually a fantastic outcome for a civilian population supported by some of the ethnic armed groups. But the reality on the ground for people is still stark. The Special Advisory Council note that the regime, who is unable to govern in the majority of the country, is reduced to being occupying military force. And what does that mean for people? Well, it means that it has stepped up its atrocities, including arbitrary torture and killing of civilians, massacres, burning people alive, extrajudicial killings of resistance detainees and using civilians as human shields, as well as air and artillery strikes on residential areas, looting, burning of houses and acts of sexual violence. Just in the last week, we have seen the decapitation of a teacher in one of the areas held by NUG forces, where the military, who can interdict and have airstrikes and send forces in to act and then withdraw, we've seen that. We've seen 7 young students killed in a helicopter attack in a Buddhist monastery recently, and the UN has documented some 260 attacks on schools and educational personnel, according to the UN Human Rights Committee. Just this last week, a Myanmar military air attack killed 80 people at a celebration, predominantly civilians, musicians and people associated with one of the political groups there. And so there is a pattern of behaviour, and what we see, in summary, is that up to date, some 2,356 civilians have been executed by the regime extrajudicially, 91 of those being under the age of 14, and a further 209 between the ages of 15 and 19. Some 12,655 have been illegally arrested, and 4 democracy activists, including a member of parliament, were given capital punishment and executed in July this year. Some 1.3 million people have been displaced, and because of the regime's interdiction and control of World Food Programme and other aid which tries to get over the borders, many of those people are facing starvation. And so the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar stresses that there are human rights abuses and war crimes being conducted on a daily basis. And so there are several requests. One, that the government look to continue allowing those people from Myanmar who are in Australia to remain, but also look at how we can increase the opportunity for people who are sheltering in third countries like Thailand or Mizoram State to come to Australia until their country is safe to return. Secondly, things like the ASEAN Military Medicine Conference, which at this stage it appears the regime's military are going to attend, ASEAN should take the step to say that they will not accept anyone from the regime attending those sorts of conferences. And third, the junta is talking of having an election in August of 2023, and putting that forward as a way to end the conflict and gain some legitimacy. But that would be entrenching the military under the old 2008 constitution into their power, whereas the democratically elected National Unity Government and the ethnic groups have developed a federal democracy charter, and the international community should be clearly recognising that any election must be under that charter.